The moment my best friend's mother looked me straight in the eyes, smiled with tears already gathering in them, and quietly said, "So you're the reason she never dates anyone?" Every sound around me disappeared. The laughter from the backyard barbecue faded into silence. The smell of grilled food vanished. Even my heartbeat seemed to stop. I had spent 12 years believing I understood my best friend better than anyone alive, but in one impossible sentence, everything I thought I knew about our lives shattered. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. For as long as I could remember, my world had quietly revolved around one person. Her name was Eliana Brooks, and she had been my best friend since we were 10 years old. We met because of a broken bicycle and a terrible attempt to fix it with duct tape. Somehow that disaster became the beginning of a friendship that survived middle school embarrassment, high school heartbreak, college applications, family struggles, and every awkward stage of growing up. Everyone assumed we were dating. Everyone. Teachers, neighbors, classmates, grocery store cashiers, even strangers at amusement parks. We laughed every single time and corrected them. We were just best friends. That answer became so automatic that I stopped wondering whether it was actually true. I was Ethan Mercer, an ordinary architect trying to build a meaningful life one project at a time. Eliana worked as a pediatric physical therapist. Watching her comfort frightened children was enough to restore anyone's faith in humanity. She carried kindness the way some people carried confidence. She never demanded attention, but every room somehow became warmer after she entered it. She remembered birthdays nobody else remembered. She secretly paid for strangers' meals when she noticed they were struggling. She volunteered every Saturday morning at a rehabilitation center without posting a single picture online. She simply believed good things didn't need an audience. Still, despite being one of the most beautiful women anyone had ever met, she never stayed in a relationship. Men asked her out constantly. Some were successful, some charming, some genuinely decent people. She politely accepted a few invitations over the years, but nothing ever lasted beyond a few weeks. Eventually people stopped asking why. They simply assumed she was too focused on work or too independent. I never questioned it either. Maybe I should have. Our weekends were predictable in the most comforting way imaginable. Saturday mornings usually meant coffee from the tiny cafe near the river, followed by long walks where we talked about everything from childhood memories to ridiculous internet videos. Sunday afternoons often ended with grocery shopping because she insisted I would survive entirely on frozen pizza if she didn't intervene. Holidays were shared between our families. Her mother, Marianne, treated me like another son. My parents adored Eliana as if she had always belonged with us. Life felt settled. Comfortable. Safe. Sometimes I caught myself imagining what it would be like if things were different. If I reached for her hand instead of jokingly bumping her shoulder. If I kissed her instead of hugging her goodbye. But those thoughts always disappeared just as quickly as they arrived. Losing my best friend was a risk I couldn't imagine taking. So I buried those feelings beneath years of friendship. Or at least I convinced myself they were buried. Everything changed during Marianne's 60th birthday celebration. The entire family had gathered in her backyard on a bright spring afternoon. Children chased each other across the grass while music floated through the warm air. Eliana looked happier than I'd seen her in months, laughing as she helped her nieces decorate cupcakes. Later, Marianne asked if I could help carry extra chairs into the garage. As soon as we were alone, she closed the garage door halfway, leaned against a shelf, and studied my face with an expression that made me unexpectedly nervous. Then she quietly asked that single question. "So you're the reason she never dates anyone?" My mouth went completely dry. I laughed because I honestly believed she was joking. She wasn't. She simply looked at me with heartbreaking sadness before whispering that she'd hoped I would figure it out years ago. I stared at her, unable to understand. She explained that every time Eliana met someone wonderful, she'd come home comparing them to me without realizing it. Nobody made her laugh the same way. Nobody understood her silences. Nobody knew how she liked her coffee without asking. Nobody remembered the tiny details that I remembered effortlessly. Every relationship quietly ended because every man she met was unknowingly competing with someone who wasn't even trying to compete. Someone who never realized he was already occupying the place in her heart. I felt the ground disappear beneath me. I wanted to argue. I wanted to insist Marianne had misunderstood. Instead, memories began crashing into my mind one after another. Every birthday she spent with me instead of traveling. Every holiday invitation she accepted before hearing anyone else's plans. The time she drove 3 hours through heavy rain because I was stranded after my car broke down. The evenings she sat beside my hospital bed after my father suffered a heart attack. The dozens of tiny moments I had dismissed as ordinary friendship. None of them felt ordinary anymore. Marianne gently smiled through tears and admitted something even more painful. Eliana had promised herself years earlier that if I ever truly fell in love with another woman, she'd step away completely so I could be happy. She had practiced smiling through imaginary heartbreak for years because she believed friendship was more important than her own feelings. I couldn't breathe. That afternoon became unbearable. Every time I looked across the yard and saw Eliana laughing with relatives, I wondered how many smiles had hidden disappointment I never noticed. When the party ended, I drove home completely numb. Sleep never came. Instead I replayed 12 years of memories until sunrise. The next morning I convinced myself Marianne had simply misinterpreted everything. It seemed impossible that someone could love another person for so many years without saying anything. But life has strange ways of revealing truth. A week later Eliana canceled our Saturday coffee. She almost never canceled. When I called, she sounded exhausted. She admitted she'd accepted a job offer in Seattle. I nearly dropped my phone. Seattle was over 2,000 miles away. She explained it was an incredible career opportunity. She sounded proud. She also sounded like someone trying not to cry. I congratulated her because that's what best friends do. After hanging up, I realized I couldn't remember breathing during the conversation. The following days became torture. Every apartment she toured. Every packing box she bought. Every farewell lunch with coworkers. Each step felt like watching someone quietly erase herself from my daily life. Still, I remained silent. Fear is a strange prison. Then something happened that destroyed my excuses forever. While helping her pack books into cardboard boxes, I accidentally knocked over an old wooden memory chest. Photographs spilled across the floor. Concert tickets. Movie stubs. Birthday cards. Pressed flowers. Little pieces of an entire lifetime. As we gathered everything, one folded envelope slipped beneath the couch. She reached for it too late. I had already picked it up. It wasn't sealed. Inside was a letter. My name covered the first page. She immediately asked me not to read it. I handed it back without opening it. But tears instantly filled her eyes. For the first time in 12 years, silence between us felt painful instead of comfortable. She finally admitted she'd written dozens of letters over the years whenever her feelings became too overwhelming. Letters she never intended to send. Letters that allowed her to say everything she couldn't risk saying aloud. She confessed she was leaving because remaining close to me had become harder every year. Watching me unknowingly search for love while standing beside her had exhausted her heart. She believed distance was the only way she could finally move on. Her words shattered something inside me. Not because I pitied her. Because I suddenly recognized the truth I'd spent years refusing to face. I wasn't afraid of losing a friendship. I was terrified because I'd loved her too. For years. Quietly. Cowardly. Completely. I had simply hidden behind friendship because it felt safer than rejection. Now that safety was costing me everything. The following morning she was scheduled to leave. I arrived at her house before sunrise. Her moving truck already waited outside. Boxes filled the driveway. She smiled sadly when she saw me. There wasn't anger in her expression. Only acceptance. The kind that comes after crying so much there are no tears left. I finally admitted every truth I'd spent years swallowing. I told her I'd measured apartments by whether she'd like visiting them. I admitted every vacation felt incomplete unless she was there. I confessed I'd compared every woman I dated to her without realizing it. I told her my happiest memories all had one thing in common. Her. I apologized for needing 12 years to understand my own heart. She stood completely still. For one terrifying moment I believed I had arrived too late. Then she laughed through tears and quietly confessed she'd spent years imagining this exact conversation, eventually convincing herself it would never happen. Neither of us noticed Marianne watching from the front porch until she softly clapped once and laughed while wiping away tears. She admitted she'd almost interrupted us several times over the years but believed some journeys couldn't be rushed. Love discovered too early can be fragile. Love discovered after years of friendship carries roots deep enough to survive storms. The moving truck never left for Seattle. Instead, Eliana declined the position. Months later I encouraged her to apply for a leadership role much closer to home. She got it. Watching her celebrate that achievement remains one of my favorite memories because this time she didn't celebrate alone. Our relationship wasn't magically perfect. Transitioning from lifelong friends to partners brought awkward moments neither of us expected. We laughed at ourselves often. Our first official date felt strangely more nervous than prom because suddenly everything mattered differently. Holding hands seemed unfamiliar despite thousands of hugs over the years. Our first kiss wasn't cinematic. It was gentle. Careful. Full of gratitude rather than fireworks. And somehow that made it unforgettable. Life continued bringing challenges. My mother became seriously ill. Her clinic faced financial uncertainty. There were days filled with fear, frustration, and exhaustion. But facing hardship together felt completely different from facing it alone. Friendship had built the foundation. Love simply moved into the home friendship had already constructed. 2 years later, surrounded by family beneath the same old oak tree where Marianne had unknowingly changed our lives with one sentence, I asked Eliana to marry me. She smiled before I even finished speaking. Apparently she'd known my answer long before I did. During our wedding reception Marianne hugged me tighter than ever before and whispered that patience sometimes gives miracles enough time to arrive. Looking around the room, I realized every meaningful chapter of my life had quietly pointed toward this moment. Not because destiny had forced it. Because two frightened people eventually found enough courage to stop protecting themselves from the happiness they already shared. There are moments when I still think about the life we almost accepted. A life where she moved across the country. A life where we attended each other's weddings pretending our smiles weren't breaking. A life built on silence instead of honesty. That future disappeared because one loving mother finally spoke the truth neither of us had the courage to face. Speech balloon special request: before the story ends, tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in this situation? If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more meaningful and inspiring stories. Your support encourages us to keep creating stories that touch hearts around the world. Life has a remarkable way of placing extraordinary love inside ordinary friendships, but fear often convinces us to ignore what our hearts already know. Sometimes the greatest risk is not telling someone you love them, it is spending a lifetime wondering what might have happened if you had. Choose kindness over pride, honesty over fear, forgiveness over regret, and hope over silence, because second chances often arrive quietly, and when they do, they have the power to transform an ordinary life into an unforgettable one.